All right.
Hello, family.
Hello. Welcome back.
Welcome back to Hear Us Out. I am Renee,
I am Kyrie.
and I want to say thank you to all of our longtime subscribers for hearing us out, and to our new listeners, thank you for being here and for hearing us out.
Thank you for hearing us out.
And we're going to continue with Frank Herbert's Dune. This is I'll say the last chapter in the second part
Mm-hmm.
of the book, and I'm really excited about what it is that you're going to lay out for us and the discussions that we're going to have because this particular part is sort of it resonated with me, and like I said, I mentioned one time before how I felt like the first time that I read it and how calm I was, and so just looking at it again and remembering how I felt before and how I feel now, I'm really
Yeah.
ready to
So this
to get
particular
into this.
chapter, I would say, is maybe my favorite chapter
Mm-hmm.
in the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, like you said, the final chapter of part two.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot that we didn't get to in our
Mm-hmm.
discussion. There were some points that I really, really would like to have talked about. But
Mm-hmm.
there was a battle to the death inside of a cave.
Oh
You
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
with Paul and all
Mm-hmm.
you see all these things, how all these things are happening with
Mm-hmm.
him, and how he's being shunted, somewhat forced down this path. That he knows where it ends.
Mm-hmm.
It ends with jihad, and he's trying desperately to change just
Right.
little things
Mm-hmm.
about what he sees
Mm-hmm.
of the future, trying his best to change it, trying to save himself and save us
Right.
from this wave of death that
Mm-hmm.
his being is creating and is
Mm-hmm.
unleashing.
Mm-hmm.
And but we see the culmination of that effort, here in the final chapter
Right.
of part two of Dune. And like I said, this might be my favorite chapter in all of
Mm-hmm.
Dune because this is the first time that things get weird. You know,
Yes.
like
Okay. Yeah.
things that we talked about visions and
Right.
all the different things and the spice and all that stuff.
Right. Well, it
You know,
is. It is this listed as a science fiction novel, even though we don't really
yeah.
consider it to
And
be one
yeah, what
until
happens here isn't really science fiction in
well
it
some
so
of
much as
the
it's psychedelic. It's
yes right
purely
right
it's like I say
right
it's the first time that
mm-hmm.
Dune gets this weird.
Right
It gets
yeah
weirder as it goes on,
but yes but yeah
in subsequent books and
mm-hmm.
stuff. But this is the first time that you really get a glimpse of just how just how varied and how I guess just how weird
Yeah.
things could get. And say this is perhaps my favorite chapter in
Mm-hmm.
all of Dune. And so yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
And first things first is every chapter opens with a little heading, a little quote and stuff. And this one is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The hands move, the lips move, ideas gush from his words, and his eyes devour. He is an island of selfdom. A description from a manual of Muad'dib by the Princess Irulan. A nice opening there.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like that, this island of selfdom. This, self-deterministic,
Mm-hmm.
completely, which is, as we get to know Paul, the complete contrary to his being.
Mm-hmm.
He can't be this singular person. He can't be an island of selfdom.
Right.
It's impossible,
That's right. Yeah.
by his very nature. But we're going to see that later
Yeah.
on,
We're gonna see how that plays
how
out,
that
right?
plays in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so let's start here.
Mm-hmm.
Phosphor tubes in the faraway upper reaches of the cavern cast a dim light onto the thronged interior, hinting at the great size of this rock-enclosed space. Larger, Jessica saw, than even the gathering hall of her Bene Gesserit school. She estimated there were more than 5,000 people gathered out there beneath the ledge where she stood with Stilgar. And more were coming. The air was murmurous with people. Your son has been summoned from his rest, Sayadina, Stilgar said. Do you wish him to share in your decision? And before I continue, we talked a lot. I don't think we gave a lot of background
Mm-hmm.
because like I said, we did skip over a lot of stuff and get into this part. But this is the culmination of Jessica's journey to ingratiate her and Paul to the Freeman people.
Right.
They've, played up this prophecy of this Reverend Mother and
Mm-hmm.
her son who will come and, give the people what they've been waiting for. These chosen ones. They've played up that prophecy, but now this is the culmination.
Right.
They are in siege to Burr with Stilgar,
Mm-hmm.
and they are. This is the ultimate ritual. This is
Right.
Jessica's final, ultimate test to prove that she
Is
is
right.
the Reverend Mother that they've been waiting for, and that Paul is, the Liaison El Gaib, the
Mm-hmm.
one, who will point the way.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the final test. This is it right here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is where we are. Could he change my decision? Jessica asked. Certainly. The air with which you speak comes from your own lungs, but the decision stands, she said. But she felt misgivings, wondering if she should use Paul as an excuse for backing out of a dangerous course. There was an unborn daughter to think of as well. Would endanger the flesh of the mother, endanger the flesh of the daughter? Men came with road carpets, grunting under the weight of them, stirring up dust as the loads were dropped onto the ledge. Stilgar took her arm, led her back into the acoustical horn that formed the rear limits of the ledge. He indicated a rock bench within the horn. The Reverend Mother will sit here, but you may rest yourself until she comes. I prefer to stand, Jessica said. She watched the men unroll the carpets, covering the ledge, looked out at the crowd. There were at least 10,000 people on the rock floor now, and still they came.
Mm-hmm.
Out on the desert, she knew it already was red nightfall, but here in the cavern hall was perpetual twilight, a great vastness thronged with people come to see her risk her life. A way was opened through the crowd to her right as she saw Paul approaching flanked by two small boys. There was a swaggering air of self-importance about the children. They kept hands on knives, scowled at the wall of people on either side. The sons of Jameis, who are now the sons of Uso, Stilgar said. They take their escort duties seriously. He ventured a small smile at Jessica. And these two, Jameis was the person that I alluded to earlier, this
Mm-hmm.
battle to the death, was the person that Paul fought with
Right.
and killed.
Right.
And in this ritualistic duel between the two. And as a result of that, Paul got James's holdings. He got his house, he got his wife,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote,
Right.
but he didn't take her as a
Right.
wife. He took her as a mate,
Right.
with no sexual component.
Right.
And
And the two
James
children.
had two children.
Mm-hmm.
One was from a prior relationship that
Mm-hmm.
the wife had, and one is actually his child.
Right.
And now Paul is somewhat of a surrogate father
Right.
to he's only 15, but he is the Liaison El Gaib,
Mm-hmm.
this person of prophecy. So
Mm-hmm.
you see that the children,
They're
have
protecting.
a very
Right.
haughty air about them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking their escort duties very seriously
Right.
over there.
Yeah,
New,
because they're really young. I think they're
yeah,
like
they're like
10
10
and
and
8.
6,
Yeah, something
and
like
stuff.
that. Yeah, they're little. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're kids and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But these are Freeman kids.
Yeah, so yeah, it's
Like you said,
different,
there's a
right?
very casual air of death about them.
Right.
And this ritual is a whole thing. Like I said, if you really want to get into it, you can read it yourself.
Right.
But yeah, and Stilgar's trying to lighten the mood with
Right.
Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
talking about these two kids,
Right, but
taking their escort duties very seriously.
right.
You know, she recognizes that.
Yes.
Literally, she said
Yes.
that. Jessica recognized the effort to lighten her mood and was grateful for it, but could not take her mind from the danger that confronted her. I had no choice but to do this, she thought. We must swiftly, if we're to secure our place among these freemen. Paul climbed to the ledge, leaving the children below. He stopped in front of his mother, glanced at Stilgar, back to Jessica. What is happening? I thought I was being summoned to council. Stilgar raised a hand for silence, gestured to his left, where another way had been opened in the throng. Chani came down the lane open there, her elfin face set in lines of grief. She had removed her steel suit and wore a graceful blue wraparound that exposed her thin arms. Near the shoulder on her left arm, a green kerchief had been tied. Now, this is the first time that we hear of this Chani character.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, we spent some time, but the first time we brought her up here. And Chani is Liette Keen's daughter.
Right.
And she was among the troop of freemen that Paul and Jessica first confronted, in the cave that we talked about a while ago. And she was given orders by Stilgar to overlook the safety of Paul,
Right.
who was, new to the habits of the freemen. and so she is his protector and
Right.
his guardian, quote unquote. But Chani is the girl that way back in the first book and way
Mm-hmm.
back in the first chapter, where Paul first tells the Reverend Mother of his dreams, of his
Right.
visions. The Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohaim, when he faced a test the Gom Jobber, he tells her of this girl
Mm-hmm.
that he keeps seeing in his dreams on this desert planet,
Mm-hmm.
and Chani is,
Right.
like,
Mm-hmm.
so he like I said, he's been feeling the calling of this planet for a very long time, and that things are moving here.
Right.
Now, we see that she is wearing green. That's
Right.
because Liet has been killed. He was killed by the Harkonnens.
Mm-hmm.
It was set up to look like an accident. So she is wearing green, and as he says, green for mourning.
Yes.
So that's where she is now. She's wearing green, and she is, a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Plays a very pivotal role in this ritual that is to come.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was one of the customs the two sons of James had explained to him, by indirection, telling him they wore no green because they accepted him as guardian father. Are you the Liza Al Gaib? They had asked, and Paul had sensed the jihad in their words, shrugged off the question with one of his own, learning then that Caliph, the elder of the two, was 10, and the natural son of Jeff, Orlop, the younger, was 8, the natural son of James. He
Mm-hmm.
was 8.
Mm-hmm.
It had been a strange day, with these two standing guard over him because he asked it, keeping away the curious, allowing him the time to nurse his thoughts and prescient memories to plan a way to prevent the jihad. Now, standing beside his mother on the cavern ledge and looking out at the throng, he wondered if any plan could prevent the wild outpouring of fanatic legions. Chani, nearing the ledge, was followed at a distance by 4 women carrying another woman in a litter. Jessica ignored China's approach, focusing all her attention on the woman in the litter, a crone, a wrinkled and shriveled ancient thing in a black gown with hood thrown back to reveal the tight knot of gray hair and the stringy neck. The litter carriers deposited their burden gently on the ledge from below, and China helped the old woman to her feet. So this is their Reverend Mother, Jessica thought. The old woman leaned heavily on Chani as she hobbled toward Jessica, looking like a collection of sticks draped in the black robe. She stopped in front of Jessica, peered upward for a long moment before speaking in a husky whisper. So, you're the one. The old head nodded, once precariously on the thin neck. The shut-out Mapes was right to pity you. Jessica spoke quickly, scornfully. I need no one's pity. That remains to be seen, husked the old woman. She turned with surprising quickness and faced the throne. Tell them, Stilgar. Must I? He asked. We are the people of the Miser, the old woman rasped. Since our Sunni ancestors fled from Nalatek al-Aruba, we have known flight and death. The young go on, that our people shall not die. And I like this sentence a
Mm-hmm.
lot, because this is the first time that we start to get the hinting at the legacy
Mm-hmm.
of oppression that these people have had to
That's
deal
right.
with.
Mm-hmm.
That they are people of flight and death. They have had to run for their entire existence.
Mm-hmm.
From planet to planet to planet for, like I said, generational
Right.
oppression. This is an oppression that has been passed down, and it's a legacy, amongst these people. So when you're reading the book, you think that this is something that is just happening on
That's
Arrakis to
right.
them, but no, this
No.
is this is something that has been happening for a long time on a great many deal of planets, for over who knows how
Yeah.
long,
That's right.
at least thousands of
Mm-hmm.
years. That they have had to run, that they have carried this burden, and you see the exactly how this culture of them, you know, why it is so necessary,
Mm-hmm.
why they do have such this casual relationship with death, and why there is this general sense of urgency about them. Even though they have these long-term plans, there's always a sense of urgency
Right.
with them, as if death is always present, that if
Mm-hmm.
any misstep and it can all be over. And I really like that, because
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time that you really get to see that, you know, the Imperium, like I've written the sentence down there, but the Imperium that they're living in hurts everyone.
Mm-hmm.
No one gets out of this unscathed, having to live in this, like this feudal system.
Mm-hmm.
Much like any system of government, it always rolls over people, but it sustains itself
Right.
off of the suffering, of the freemen,
Freeman, right?
of these people who have been, oppressed and abused for thousands of years from planet to planet. That's the suffering that matters the most. Their
Mm-hmm.
suffering, their pain, their oppression is the one that keeps the system alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sounds familiar.
where and this system is a system of suffering that
Mm-hmm.
hurts everyone, but there's
Mm-hmm.
only one people suffering
Mm-hmm.
that matters the most, that is integral to the maintenance of this system, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the suffering of the freemen.
Freeman. Mm-hmm.
Like, all of that encapsulated in this one little phrase that this Reverend Mother tells the steel guard to,
Mm-hmm.
tell him that this is necessary,
Right.
that there is a sense of urgency here, that this must be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the young go on that our people shall not die. You know, Stilgar took a deep breath, stepped forward 2 paces. Jessica felt the hush come over the crowded cavern, some 20,000 people now, standing silently, almost without movement. It made her feel suddenly small and filled with caution. Tonight we must leave this siege that has sheltered us for so long and go south into the desert, Stilgar said. His voice boomed out across the uplifted faces, reverberating with the force given it by the acoustical horn behind the ledge. Still the throng remained silent. The Reverend Mother tells me she cannot survive another Hajra, Stilgar said. We have lived before without a Reverend Mother, but it is not good for people to seek a new home in such straits. Now the throng stirred, rippling with whispers and currents of disquiet. That this may not come to pass, Stilgar said. Our new Sayadina, Jessica of the Weirding, has consented to enter the rite at this time. She will attempt to pass within that we not lose the strength of our Reverend Mother. Jessica the Weirding, Jessica thought. She saw Paul staring at her, his eyes filled with questions, but his mouth held silent by all the strangeness around them. If I die in the attempt, what will become of him? Jessica asked herself. Again she felt the misgivings fill her mind. Shiny led the old Reverend Mother to a rock bench deep in the acoustical horn, returned to stand beside Stilgar. That we may not lose all if Jessica of the Word and should fail, Stilgar said, Chani, daughter of Liet, will be consecrated into Sayadina at this time. He stepped 1 pace to the side. From deep in the acoustical horn the old woman's voice came out to them, an amplified whisper, harsh and penetrating. Shani has returned from her Hajra. Shani has seen the waters. A certain response arose from the crowd. She has seen the waters. I consecrate the daughter of Liet into Sayadina, husked the old woman. She is accepted, the crowd responded. Paul barely heard the ceremony, his attention still centered on what had been said of his mother, if he should fail. He turned and looked back at the one they called Reverend Mother, studying the dry crowned features, the fathomless blue fixation of her eyes. She looked as though a breeze would blow her away, yet there was that about her which suggested she might stand untouched in the path of a querulous storm. She carried the same aura of power that he remembered from the Reverend Mother Gaia Mohane, who had tested him with agony in the way of the gom jobber. I, the Reverend Mother Ramallo, whose voice speaks as a multitude, say this to you, the old woman said. It is fitting that Chani enter the Sayadina. It is fitting, the crowd responded. The old woman nodded, whispered, I give her the silver skies, the golden desert, and the shining rocks, the green fields that will be. I give these to Sayadina Chani, and lest she forget that she is servant of us all, to her fall the menial task in the ceremony of the seed. Let it be as Shaya Halud will have it. She lifted a brown stick on, dropped it. Jessica, feeling the ceremony close around her, with a current that swept her beyond all turning back, glanced once at Paul's question-filled face and prepared herself for the ordeal. Now we begin.
Mm-hmm.
Let the water masses come forward, Chani said, with only the slightest quiver of uncertainty in her garrow child voice. Now Jessica felt herself as the focus of danger, knowing its presence in the watchfulness of the throng, in the silence. A band of men made its way through a serpentine path open in the crowd, moving up from the back in pairs. Each pair carried a small skin sack, perhaps twice the size of a human head. The sacks sloshed heavily. The 2 leaders deposited their load at Johnny's feet
Mm-hmm.
on the ledge and stepped back. Jessica looked at the sack, then at the men. They had their hoods thrown back, exposing long hair tied in a roll at the base of their neck. The black pits of their eyes stared back at her without wavering. A furry redolence of cinnamon arose from the sack, wafted across Jessica. The spice? She wondered. Is there water? Chani asked. The water master on the left, A man with a purple scar line across the bridge of his nose nodded once. There is water, Sayadina, he said, but we cannot drink of it. Is there seed? Chani asked. There is seed, the man said. Chani knelt and put her hands on the sloshing sack. Blessed is the water and its seed. There was familiarity to the right, and Jessica looked back at the Reverend Mother Ramallo. The old woman's eyes were closed, and she sat hunched over, as though asleep. Sayadina Jessica, Chani said. Jessica turned to see the girl staring up at her. Have you tasted the blessed waters? Chani asked. Before Jessica could answer, Chani said, It is not possible that you have tasted the blessed waters. You are outworlder and unprivileged. A sigh passed through the crowd, a sensation of robes that made the nape hairs creep on Jessica's neck. The crop was large, and the maker had been destroyed, Chani said. She began unfastening a coiled spout fixed to the top of the sloshing sack. And remember, maker is their word for sandworm.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's from the sandworm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jessica felt a sense of danger boiling around her. She glanced at Paul. Excuse me. She glanced at Paul, saw that he was caught up in the mystery of the ritual and had eyes only for Chani. Had he seen this moment in time, Jessica wondered? She rested a hand on her abdomen, thinking of the unborn daughter here, asking herself, Do I have the right to risk us both? Chani lifted the spout toward Jessica, said, Here is the water of life, the water that is greater than water. Khan, the water that frees the soul. If you be a Reverend Mother, it opens the universe to you. I shall halal judge you now. Jessica felt herself torn between duty to her unborn child and duty to Paul. For Paul, she knew she would take that spout and drink of the sack's contents. But as she bit to the proffered spout, her sense told her its peril. The stuff in the sack had a bitter smell, subtly akin to many poisons that she knew, but unlike them too. You must drink it now, Chani said. There's no turning back, Jessica reminded herself, but nothing in all her Bene Gesserit training came into her mind to help her through this instant. What is it? Jessica asked herself. Liquor? A drug? She bent over the spout, smelled the ethers of cinnamon, remembering then the drunkenness of Duncan Idaho. Spiced liqueur, she asked herself. She took the siphon tube in her mouth, pulled up only the most minuscule sip. It tasted of the spice, a faint bite acrid on the tongue. Chani pressed down on the skin bag. A great gulp of the stuff surged into Jessica's mouth, and before she could help herself, she swallowed it, fighting to retain her calmness and dignity. To accept a little death is worse than death itself, Chani said. She stared at Jessica, waiting, and Jessica stared back, still holding the spout in her mouth. She tasted the sex constants in her nostrils, in the roof of her mouth, in her cheeks, in her eyes. A biting sweetness now. Cool. Again, Chani sent the liquid gushing into Jessica's mouth. Delicate. Jessica studied Chani's face, elfin features, seeing the traces of Liet Keen's there as yet unfixed by time. This is a drug they feed me, Jessica told herself, but it was unlike any other drug of her experience, and Bene Gesserit training included the taste of many drugs. Chani's features were so clear, as though outlined in light. A drug. Whirling silence settled around Jessica, every fiber of her body except the fact that something profound had happened to it. She felt that she was a conscious mote, smaller than any subatomic particle, yet capable of motion and sensing her surroundings. Like an abrupt revelation, the curtains whipped away. She realized she had become aware of a psychokinesthetic extension of herself. She was the mote, yet not the mote. The cavern remained around her. The people, she sensed them. Paul, Chani, Stilgar, and the Reverend Mother Ramallo. Reverend Mother. At the school there had been rumors that some did not survive the Reverend Mother ordeal, that the drug took them. Jessica focused her attention on the Reverend Mother Ramallo, aware now that all of this was happening in a frozen instant of time, suspended time, for her alone. Why is time suspended? She asked herself. She stared at the frozen expressions around her, seeing a dust mote above Chani's head, stopped there, waiting. The answer to this instant came like an explosion in her consciousness. Her personal time was suspended to save her life. She focused on the psychokinesthetic extension of herself, looking within, and was confronted immediately with a cellular core, a pit of blackness from which she recoiled. That is the place where we cannot look, she thought. There is the place the Reverend Mothers are so reluctant to mention, the place where only a Kwisatz Haderach may look. This realization returned a small measure of confidence, and again she ventured to focus on the psychokinesthetic extinction, becoming a mote self that searched within her for danger. Let me stop here for a
Mm-hmm.
moment and try my best to explain what's happening right now.
Right. Basically, she said it's almost like I'm gonna say an out of body experience. You can
Well,
almost say.
an inner body
Okay. Well, yeah.
experience
Yeah. Yeah.
is that
Right.
she has taken this drug,
Mm-hmm.
this water of life,
Mm-hmm.
which is composed of things which seems to be part of spice, part poison,
Right.
part drug. She's really struggling to comprehend
Right.
what it is she's tasting,
Mm-hmm.
which is very unusual for River Mother, you know. But, it surges into her, and her awareness kind of collapses in herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees, like she says, this psychokinesthetic extension of
Mm-hmm.
herself, which is something of, I would say, an astral projection of her being
Mm-hmm.
on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And she's both looking out and in. She sees
Right.
time slow to
Mm-hmm.
crawl around her because there is something about this spice that is imperiling her life. And as she looks inward, she sees that place that they cannot go.
Mm-hmm.
And that returns some measure of sense to her, as she gets a fix on her surroundings and begins to see, and begins to walk the halls of her self,
Right.
the interior of her being, until she finds like she said, a cellular core, this thing, you know. So she is inside her own being, watching her body
Yeah.
react to
Mm-hmm.
this
That's why.
spice liqueur.
Right. That's why I called it. It is the inner thing, but that's
Mm-hmm.
why I call it like it's almost like this out of body experience where it's it's the separation that allows for her to
Because she's on the outside looking
looking
in.
in. Right.
She
Right.
sees everything
Mm-hmm.
around her. She
Mm-hmm.
sees Chani and Stilgar,
Mm-hmm.
but she also is looking deep, deep inside of herself.
Right.
This very introspective drug
Mm-hmm.
that has given her this renewed awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike anything that she's ever had before.
Right.
Of this, this astral self that is projecting inside of her being.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
That's
what's
what's
happening
happening.
right
Right.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we're getting weird.
Right.
You know, she found it within the drug she had swallowed. The stuff was that? Did I read? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this one. The stuff was dancing particles within her, its motion so rapid that even frozen time could not stop them. Dancing particles. She began recognizing familiar structures, atomic linkages. A carbon atom here, helical wavering, a glucose molecule, an entire chain of molecules confronted her, and she recognized a protein. A methyl protein configuration. Ah, it was a soundless mental sigh within her as she saw the nature of the poison. With a psychokinesthetic probing, she moved into it, shifted it oxygen mode, allowed another carbon mode to link, reattached the linkage of oxygen, hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
The change spread fast, faster and faster as the catalyzed reaction opened its surface of contact. The suspension of time relaxed its hold upon her, and she sensed motion. The tube spout from the sac she touched to her mouth, gently collecting a drop of moisture. This is the part that gets
Yeah.
gets me excited every time I read it. Because what she just did
Mm-hmm.
is nuts.
Right.
She took this poison,
Mm-hmm.
right? This spice liqueur, this water of life, that was laced with this poison, right? And she used her own
Molecular.
body structure, her
Right.
own being, and
Right.
this new awareness, the
Mm-hmm.
psychokinesthetic link to
Mm-hmm.
this inner self
Mm-hmm.
to change the molecular structure
Structure of the
of this
poison.
poison
Right.
to make it inert.
Right.
She like manipulated her own body chemistry
Right.
to such an extent that it was able to render this poison that was inside
Right.
of this drug to not take away the new awareness,
Right.
the psychedelic effect this
Mm-hmm.
drug is having, only inoculating and stopping the poison.
Right.
She that completely blew my mind. It blows my mind every time I read it.
She's
She
basically turning them into water cells almost
yeah,
like
she
she's
turned it into
right,
water. She
water.
turned
Right.
the poison. She like it's ridiculous.
Right.
She manipulates her own body chemistry to such an extent that she's able to, change this surging
Right.
poison, this surging thing through her body.
Hmm.
Like even in the stillness that she's feeling, this thing is constantly moving,
Right.
dancing around.
Hmm.
And she is able to leverage her own knowledge, her own control of
Right.
her own body chemistry
Hmm.
to inoculate to inoculate herself and to render this poison inert. That is just
Bizarre.
nuts to
Yeah.
me. I'm floored every time I read it, and this is just the beginning.
Right.
This is just the beginning
Hmm.
here. You know, the suspension of time relaxed its hold upon her, and she sensed motion. The tube spout from the sac was touched to her mouth gently, collecting a drop of moisture. China's taking the catalyst from her body to change the poison in that sac. Jessica thought, why? Someone eased her to a sitting position. She saw the old Reverend Mother Ramallo being brought to sit beside her on the
Hmm.
carpeted ledge. A dry hand touched her neck, and there was another psychokinesthetic mote within her awareness. Jessica tried to reject it, but the mote swept closer, closer. They touched. It was like an ultimate simpatico, being two people at once, not telepathy, but mutual awareness. With the old Reverend Mother, but Jessica saw that the Reverend Mother didn't think of herself as
That's
old.
old, right?
An image unfolded before the mutual mind eye, a young girl with a dancing spirit and a tender humor. Within the mutual awareness, the young girl said, yes, that is how I am. Jessica could only accept the words, not respond to them. You'll have it all soon, Jessica, the inward image said. This is hallucination, Jessica told herself. You know better than that,
That right.
the inward image said. Swiftly now. Do not fight me. There isn't much time, There came a long pause then. You should have told us you were pregnant. Jessica found the voice that talked within the mutual awareness. Why? This changes both of you. Holy Mother, what have we done? Jessica sensed a forced shift in the mutual awareness, saw another mote presence with the inward eye. The other mote darted wildly here, there, circling, irradiated pure terror. You'll have to be strong, the Reverend Mother's image presence said. Be thankful it's a daughter you carry. This would have killed a male fetus. Now, carefully, gently, touch your daughter's presence. Be your daughter's presence. Absorb the fear. Soothe. Use your courage and your strength. Gently now. Gently. The other whirling mote swept near, and Jessica compelled herself to touch it. Terror threatened to overwhelm her. She fought it the only way she knew. I shall not fear. Fear is the mind killer. The litany brought a semblance of calm. The other mote lay quiescent against her. Words won't work, Jessica told herself. She reduced herself to basic emotional reactions, radiated love, comfort, a warm snuggling of protection. The terror receded. Again the presence of the old Reverend Mother asserted itself, but now there was a tripling of mutual awareness, two active and one that lay quietly absorbing. Time compels me, the Reverend Mother said within the awareness. I have much to give you, and I do not know if your daughter can accept all this without remaining sane, but it must be. The needs of the tribe are paramount. What? Remain silent and accept. Experiences began to unroll before Jessica. It was like a lecture script in a subliminal training projector at the Bene Gesserit school, but faster, blindingly faster, yet distinct. She knew each experience as it happened. There was a lover, virile, bearded, with the Freeman eyes, and Jessica saw his strength and tenderness, all of him in one blink moment, through the Reverend Mother's memory. There was no time now to think of what this might be doing to the daughter fetus, only time to accept and record. The experiences poured in on Jessica: birth, life, death, important matters and unimportant, an outpouring of single view time. Why should a fall of sand from a cliff top stick in the memory? She asked herself. Too late. Jessica saw what was happening. The old woman was dying, and in
Hmm.
dying, pouring her experiences into Jessica's awareness.
Hmm.
As water is poured into a cup, the other mote faded back into pre-birth awareness as Jessica watched it. And dying in conception, the old Reverend Mother left her life in Jessica's memory, with one last sighing blur of words. I've been a long time waiting for you, she said. Here is my life. There it was, encapsulated, all of it, even the moment of death. I am now Reverend Mother, Jessica realized, and she knew with a generalized awareness that she had become, in truth, precisely what was meant by Reverend Mother. The poison drug had transformed her. This wasn't exactly how they did it at the Bene Gesserit school, she knew. No one had ever introduced her to the mysteries of it, but she knew. The end result was the same. Jessica sensed the daughter mote still touching her inner awareness, probed it without response. A terrible sense of loneliness crept through Jessica in the realization of what had happened to her. She saw her own life as a pattern that had slowed, and all life around her speeded up, so that the dancing interplay became clearer. The sensation of mote awareness faded slightly, its intensity easing as her body relaxed from the threat of the poison, but she still felt that other mote, touching it with a sense of guilt at what she had allowed to happen to it. I did it. My poor, unformed, dear little daughter, I brought you into this universe and exposed your awareness to all its varieties without any defenses. A tiny outflowing of love comfort, like a reflection of what you had poured into it, came from the other mote. Let me just stop right here real quick. This is flooring me. It's doing it again. It's doing it again. From the first time to this time. Once again, let me try to explain what just happened there, if you don't understand. But through this inner projection of self, which the Reverend Mother always had, the Reverend Mother Ramallo, she was able to, inject her own inner self into Jessica.
Right.
And there was, like I said, the two didn't become one. There was a mutual awareness of each other inside of Jessica. As, the Reverend Mother began to pour the entirety of her experiences into, Jessica. But there was the daughter inside of her that was terrified at being preborn, as they say in the book.
Right.
She was, brought into consciousness before ever being, leaving her mother's womb. And to more than consciousness, she was being brought to bear to the entire experiences of both her mother and this Reverend Mother Ramallo, and all the lives encapsulated in her. So before, her daughter is even born, she's experiencing life and death. She's experiencing all these emotions and all these feelings again and again and again, and it is, driving her insane.
Right.
It could, but Jessica, through her strength and the direction of the Reverend Mother, is able to temper, the terror in her daughter by radiating this motherly sense of protection and love, to calm her, as this, this influx of single view time, just overwhelms her. And every experience is flashing by like blindingly fast, but each one in perfect detail. She can recall them all, and even the moment of the Reverend Mother's death, all of it, is now encapsulated in both her and her daughter.
Right.
And she feels this sense of guilt as, for doing this to her daughter, for awakening her before she was meant to be awoken, for putting their current predicament over the safety of her own daughter. But the daughter herself, in her new awareness, radiates this love back to her mother. And it's just this, you see, like, you often hear this word of this trinocular view, that Paul has of past, present, and future. But right now, you see these three different perspectives of these three different women. One like the old crone, one the young woman, and of the mother, and the one of this unborn daughter, on the inside, and that's a particular thing that we see, many a times reverberated throughout history. You can just look at Hecate, who is known as the ultimate crone, the goddess of magic in Greek mythology, who's often seen as having three faces. One of the old woman, the old crone, the other of the young woman, and the other of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that reflected in this one particular moment that gives Jessica this awareness,
Mm-hmm.
unlike any Reverend Mother, and unlike anything she's ever
Right.
experienced. And now she has to contend with this new view as she says, as her life slows down and everything speeds up around her in this new startling clarity, not just for her, but for her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, it's harrowing. It's harrowing, to think about this experience and
Mm-hmm.
how it's reflected in all these things, you know, and the lengths that a mother would go to protect her child.
Right.
She's doing this, to give Paul what he needs.
Right.
This ultimate burden, just like a woman, they always do that. They're doing that. That's like this ultimate mother, the Reverend Mother,
Right.
this protector, who has become the Sayadina, the protector of this entire people, of this entire memory,
Mm-hmm.
of this legacy of purpose that has been given to her, that now has irrevocably chained her and her daughter
Right.
to the Freeman people and this cause and this dream. And is that a sense of urgency that has imparted this to them, that now that she has it, now has become this new tool, this
Mm-hmm.
new awareness that has shocked her, both mind and body, into this new self,
Right.
you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
allow me to continue. Before Jessica could respond, she felt the Adab presence of demanding memory. There was something that needed doing. She groped for it, realizing she was being impeded by a muzziness in the changed drug permeating her senses. I could change that, she thought. I could take away the drug action and make it harmless, but she sensed this would be an error, and within her right of joining. Then she knew what she had to do. Jessica opened her eyes, gestured to the water sack now being held above her.
Mm-hmm.
It has been blessed, Jessica said. Mingle the waters. Let the change come to all, that the people may partake and share in the blessing. Let the catalyst do its work, she thought. Let the people drink of it and have their awareness of each other heightened for a while. The drug is safe now that a Reverend Mother has changed it. Still, the changing memory worked on her, thrusting. There was another thing she had to do, she realized, but the drug made it difficult to focus. Ah, the old Reverend Mother. I have met the Reverend Mother Ramallo, Jessica said. She is gone, but she remains. Let her memory be honored in the right. Now, where did I get those words? Jessica wondered.
Hmm.
And she realized they came from another memory, the life that had been given to her, and now was part of herself. Something about that gift felt incomplete, though. Let them have their orgy, the other memory said within her. They've little enough pleasure out of living. Yes, and you and I need this little time to become acquainted before I recede and pour out through your memories. Already, I feel myself being tied to bits of you. You've a mind filled with interesting things, so many things I never imagined. And the memory mind encapsulated within her opened itself to Jessica, permeating a view down a wide corridor to other Reverend Mothers until there seemed no end to them. Jessica recalled, fearing she would become lost in an ocean of oneness. Still the corridor remained, revealing to Jessica that the Freeman culture was far older than she had suspected. There had been Freemen on Portran, she saw, a people grown soft with an easy plan, fair game for imperial raiders to harvest and plant human colonies on Bella Tegus and Salute Secundus. Oh, the wailing Jessica sensed in that parting. Far down the corridor, an image voice screamed, they denied us the Hajj.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica saw the slave cribs on Bella Tegus down the inner corridor, saw the weeding out and selecting that spread men to Rosic and Harmontep. Since scenes of brutal ferocity opened to her like the petals of a terrible flower, and she saw the thread of that past carried by Ciudadina after Ciudadina, first by word of mouth, hidden in the sand shanties, then refined through their own Reverend Mothers with the discovery of the poison drug on Rosic, and now developed to subtle strength on Ericus in the discovery of the water of life. Far down the inner corridor, another voice screamed, never to forgive, never to forget.
Mm-hmm.
But Jessica's attention was focused on the revelation of the water of life, seeing its source, the liquid exhalation of a dying sandworm, a maker. And as she saw the killing of it in her new memory, she suppressed a gasp. The creature was drowned. Mother, are you all right? Let me just
Mm-hmm.
stop right here, right quick, because
Mm-hmm.
once again, I feel the need to explain,
Right.
just to talk about gush more
Right.
over what's happening here. As you know, Jessica was able to project
Mm-hmm.
her inner
Mm-hmm.
awareness and her inner control of her body chemistry to not just, you know, make the poison inside of the drug inert for her,
Mm-hmm.
but to make the poison inert inside of the drug itself,
Right.
even that's still inside of the
The
sac.
sack. Right.
So she was able to project her inwardness outward,
Mm-hmm.
to change the chemistry of the drug in itself.
Right.
And if that's not galling enough, you know, the memory, she plays out the part that she knows that she has to play from this new awareness that she
Right.
has, you know, and also the Reverend Mother begins to show her, like I said, this giant hall of all the other Reverend Mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And you begin to see, like I said, this generational oppression
Mm-hmm.
begin to become more and more into detail.
Right.
As you begin to see it from planet to planet to
Mm-hmm.
planet. And I just find it funny because, when he talks about how the Reverend Mothers have always carried this burden, this
Mm-hmm.
impetus of the people, of their denial, of their
Mm-hmm.
rage, never to forgive, never to forget.
Mm-hmm.
They all carry this impetus. And at first they carried it through, shanties,
Right.
through songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then to carry it, to hold it became their entire being. And now
Right.
they're, with the help of this poison that they found on Rostic and the water of life,
Mm-hmm.
which is,
But
like I said, the liquid exhalations
right.
of a drown. So there's enough water on this planet to drown a maker,
right, a sandworm, right.
and they mingle this byproduct
Mm-hmm.
with this drug to
Right.
create this new thing, to
Mm-hmm.
create this new awareness between them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find that whole arc,
Right.
of this of how they have been able to carry this impetus from Reverend Mother to
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Mother for so long to be, you know, uh, refreshing
Mm-hmm.
or familiar, a bit of
Yeah,
both.
it's a bit of both.
Because it just reminded me of us and
Right.
how we used to, when the slaves would sing songs
Mm-hmm.
on the plantations, those songs were actually messages,
Right.
To each other,
Right.
or you could say in a sense they were memories,
Mm-hmm.
of being imparted to everyone to, this
That's
same
exactly what I
general
was going to talk
experience.
about
Yeah.
because at the beginning, like at the beginning of their lives, it wasn't that way.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was fine, and and they were like everything was just happy. Then next thing you know, something happens that challenges them,
Mm-hmm.
and ever since that, came in and challenged their way of life. This is what it has been
This
for
holy
them.
order of women,
That's right. Mm-hmm.
whom have some connection to the Bene Gesserit, but
Right.
seem to have this unyielding loyalty
Mm-hmm.
to the freemen, have
Right.
carried this impetus throughout the generations, throughout this oppression.
Right.
They have carried this message: never forgive, never forget.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just, like I said, that's where the cohesion for them has allowed.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't forgotten,
Right.
And they have learned the lessons of their past,
Mm-hmm.
And they continue to hold this,
Mm-hmm.
And now it is Jessica's
Mm-hmm.
turn, to hold this,
Mm-hmm.
Not just Jessica, but also her daughter,
Right.
Has been thrown into this responsibility,
right.
Greater responsibility than you and I could ever even comprehend,
Mm-hmm.
To be the guides of an entire people, and it's just, you see it
Mm-hmm.
reflected. And Jessica is caught up in the revelation of what the water of life actually is,
Right.
which is another culmination of their entire experience,
Mm-hmm.
from planet to planet to planet, a mingling of all the disparate parts of their oppressed culture,
Right.
But it's just, and all of it's interrupted by Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Mother, are you all right?
Yeah, he
just
comes in right. She
walking
looks,
in,
she don't look at him
but
like,
yeah, but let me continue.
yeah.
But yeah, because that's not the weird part.
Yeah.
It gets weirder
Mm-hmm.
because now it's Paul's turn,
Yep. Paul is going to
and
take
we're
it
going to
right.
see
What
once again
happens?
this
Yeah.
another ultimate lesson. This again, this book is amazing. All right. Paul's voice intruded on her, and Jessica struggled out of the inner awareness to stare up at him, conscious of duty to him, her resenting his presence. I'm like a person whose hands were kept numb, without sensation from the first moment of awareness, until one day the ability to feel is forced into them. The thought hung in her mind, an enclosing awareness, and I say, look, I have no hands. But the people all around me say, what are hands? It's a perfect encapsulation. You know, are you all right? Paul repeated. Yes. Is this all right for me to drink? You just at the sack in Chinese hands. They want me to drink it. She heard the hidden meaning in his words,
Mm-hmm.
realized he had detected the poison in the original, unchanged substance, that he was concerned for her. It occurred to Jessica then to wonder about the limits of Paul's prescience. His question revealed much to her. You may drink it, she said. It has been changed. And she looked beyond him to see Stilgar staring down at her, the dark eyes studying. Now we know you cannot be false, he said. She sensed hidden meaning here too, but the muzziness of the drug was overpowering her senses. How warm it was, soothing. How beneficent these freemen to bring her into the fold of such companionship. Paul saw the drug take hold of his mother. He searched his memory, the fixed past, the flux lines of the possible futures. It was like scanning through arrested instances of time, disconcerting to the lenses of the inner eye. The fragments were difficult to understand when snatched out of the flux. This drug, he could assemble knowledge about it, understand what it was doing to his mother, but the knowledge lacked a natural rhythm, lacked a system of mutual reflection. He realized suddenly that it was one thing to see the past occupying the present, but the true test of prescience was to see the past in the future. Things persisted in not being what they seemed.
Mm-hmm.
Drink it, Johnny said. She waved the horn spout of a water sack under his nose. Paul straightened, staring at Johnny. He felt carnival excitement in the air. He knew what would happen if he drank this spice drug with this quintessence of the substance that brought the change onto him. He would return to the vision of time become space. It would perch him on the dizzying summit and defy him to understand. From behind, Johnny Stilgar said, Drink it, lad. You delay the right. Paul listened to the crowd then, hearing the wildness in their voices. Lisan al Gaib, they said. Muad'dib.
Mm-hmm.
He looked down at his mother. She appeared peacefully asleep in a
Mm-hmm.
sitting position, her breathing even and deep. A phrase out of the future that was his lonely past came into his mind. She sleeps in the water of life. Johnny tugged at his sleeve. He's going to stop you now
Mm-hmm.
because this is one of the parts that I think really encapsulates like the true pull of life
Mm-hmm.
of his history, which is the future for all of us.
Right.
But all because he does not want the jihad to come to pass.
That's right.
He does not want to be the figurehead that unleashes this throng of death onto the galaxy. He doesn't want to be, but he feels it pulling him.
Mm-hmm.
Like Chani tugging at his sleeve.
Right.
He feels it pulling him. And I ask myself, well, why doesn't he just stop? If he really doesn't want this, he can just stop.
Mm-hmm.
He can, you know, but there's another part of me that says, well, he can't just stop,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I asked, well, why is that? Why can't he just stop? You know, but when you see, especially like when you see like the generational oppression that
Mm-hmm.
these people have gone through, and the part that he is meant to play, that not just the freemen are pushing him toward, but the entirety of the human condition
Mm-hmm.
is pushing him toward this place. You have to ask yourself, how can you deny these people
Mm-hmm.
justice, quote unquote?
Right.
How can you deny them what they are owed? From planet to planet, they have been oppressed. The Imperium runs, it subsists
It's
off
on.
of their suffering.
Mm-hmm.
How can you not give them what they're owed? How can you not give yourself what you are owed? This Imperium took your father.
Mm-hmm.
It put you here. The Bene Gesserit put you
To
here.
hear,
Your
right.
mother put you here.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things forcing you along this path. To, and all they can see is what it means to them. But
Mm-hmm.
you are cursed with a greater awareness. And even your mother, with what she has gone through,
Yep.
can even see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because what she has gone through is a sense of oneness, is a sense of oneness with herself. There is no oneness in Paul.
Right.
Paul's awareness is outward and outward.
Mm-hmm.
It is past and future, everything reflecting on itself again and again. And he does not want to be caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
But how can he resist? How can he deny himself? How can he
Mm-hmm.
deny these people? How can he deny the pull of the human condition that refuses to learn? You know? And it's in moments like this that you begin to to understand why Paul is where he
Mm-hmm.
is and why the pull of these things are so inexorable, you know, and why Paul ends up taking,
Yep.
you know, the first sip,
Mm-hmm.
first gulp,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because she's gonna.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
from this of the waters of life
Mm-hmm.
and how it changes him once again. Paul took the horn spout into his mouth, hearing the people shout. He felt the liquid gush into his throat as Chani pressed the sack, sensed giddiness in the fumes. China removed the spout, handed the sack into hands that reached for it from the floor of the cavern. His eyes focused on her arm, the green band of mourning there. As she straightened, China saw the direction of his gaze. Said, I can mourn him even in the happiness of the waters. This was something he gave us. She put her hand into his, pulling him along the ledge. We are alike in the thing, Uso. We have each lost a father to the Harkonnens. Paul followed her. He felt that his head had been separated from his body and restored with odd connections. His legs were remote and rubbery. They entered a narrow side passage, its walls dimly lighted by spaced out glow globes. Paul felt the drug beginning to have its unique effect on him, opening time like a flower. He found need to steady himself against Channing as they turned through another shadowed tunnel. The mixture of whipcord and softness he felt beneath her robe stirred his blood. Sensations mingled with the work of the drug, folding future and past into the present, leaving him the thinnest margin of trinocular focus. I know you, Chani, he whispered. We've sat upon a ledge above the sand while I soothed your fears. We've caressed in the dark of the siege. We've... He found himself losing focus, tried to shake his head, stumbled. Chani steadied him, led him through thick hangings into the yellow warmth of a private apartment. Low tables, cushions, a sleeping pad beneath the orange spread. Paul grew aware that they had stopped, that China stood facing him, and that her eyes betrayed a look of quiet terror. You must tell me, she whispered. You are Sahaya, he said, the desert spring. When the tribe shares the water, she said, we're together. All of us. We share. I can sense the others with me, but I'm afraid to share with you. Why? He tried to focus on her. Past and future were merging into the present, blurring her image. He saw her in countless ways, in positions, and settings. There's something frightening in you, she said. When I took you away from the others, I did it because I could feel what the others wanted. You press on people. You make us see things. He forced himself to speak distinctly. What do you see? She looked down at her hands. I see a child in my arms. It's our child, yours and mine. She put a hand to her mouth. How can I know every feature of you? They've a little of the talent, his mind told him, but they suppress it because
Mm-hmm.
it terrifies. In a moment of clarity, he saw how China was trembling. What is it you want to say? He asked. Usa, she whispered, and still she trembled. You cannot back into the future, he said. A profound compassion for her swept through him. He pulled her against him, stroked her hand. Chani, don't fear. Uso, help me, she cried. As she spoke, he felt the drug complete its work within him, ripping away the curtains to let him see the distant gray turmoil of his future. You're so quiet, Chani said. He held himself poised in the awareness, seeing time stretch out in its weird dimension, delicately balanced yet whirling, narrow yet spread like a net gathering countless worlds and forces, a tight wire that he must walk. yet a teeter-totter on which he balanced. On one side he could see the Imperium, a Harkonnen called Fade-Ruther, who flashed toward him like a deadly blade, the Sardaukar raging off their planet to spread pogrom on Arrakis. The Guild conniving and plotting, the Bene Gesserit with their scheme of selective breeding. They lay massed like a thunderhead on his horizon, held back by no more than the Freemen and their Muad'dib, the sleeping giant Freemen poised for their wild crusade across the universe. Paul felt himself at the center, at the pivot where the whole structure turned, walking a thin wire of peace with a measure of happiness, Chani at his side. He could see it stretching ahead of him, a time of relative quiet, in a hidden siege, a moment of peace between periods of violence. There's no other place for peace, he said. Usu, you're crying, Chani murmured. Usu, my strength, do you give mercy to the dead? To who's dead? To ones not yet dead, he said. Then let them have their time of life, she said. He sensed through the drug fog how right she was, pulled her against him with savage pressure. Sahaya, he said, put a palm against his cheek. I'm no longer afraid, Uso. Look at me. I see what you see when you hold me thus. What do you see? He demanded. I see us giving love to each other in a time of quiet between storms. It's what we were meant to do. The drug had him again, and he thought, so many times you've given me comfort and forgetfulness. He felt anew the hyper-illumination with its high relief imagery of time, since his future becoming memories, the tender indignities of physical love, the sharing and communing of selves, the softness and the violence. You're the strong one, Chani, he muttered. Stay with me. Always, she said, and kissed his cheek. This is the end of this chapter. And
of this book, that
particular part
of the book. Mm-hmm.
Part of the book. And I just want to go back here and once again try to explain everything that Paul is seeing, what he's going through here. You know, so he takes the drug. He relents and he takes the drug and gives in to it. He knows what it's going to do to him. And China leads him away as his view of time becomes trinocular, the past and the present and the future folding in on itself.
Right.
And he begins to see all of it, you know, once again. And Chani is speaking to him. He's speaking to her, talking about, you know, that he's seen her, that he's been with her in countless moments and countless times. And, you know, Chani's struggling to understand because she's afraid of this awareness that he imparts to the Freeman people, that he's giving to her.
Right.
You know, she's afraid of what that might mean for her, what that might mean for all of them, and what they might see. You know, and she sees their child, you know, holding it, literally holding it, you know, in her hands, and she's frightened. And through that, you know, her frightfulness, Paul is able to pull himself out, you know, into a new awareness. Because he's not there by himself. He's actually caring about this other person, about Chana, and he wants to comfort her. So he is able to pull himself through, you know, and pull his vision forward to see something, you know, beyond, you know, beyond the jihad. You know, he sees the Harkonnens. He sees Fade-Ruther, you know, the Harkonnen heir. He sees the Sardaukar, you know, looking to unleash pogrom, which is genocide among the Freeman people, these people who gave them a fight. You know, the Sardaukar are these elite warriors who have no equals until they met the Freemen of Arrakis. And now, sensing that there's a challenge there, they want to wipe them all out. He sees the guild plotting. He sees the Bene Gesserit plotting, and he sees himself at the head of this throng and the wild crusade of the Freemen. You know, he sees what his choices are. You know, he sees the forces pulling at himself, you know, that are pulling him forward. The necessity of his being.
Right.
You know,
he can't back into it.
You know, he, like I said, he can't back into it. He tells that to Johnny. Don't, pull away.
Mm-hmm.
Face it straight on. And he sees it. She sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And they see the necessity of each other, of each other's company, of what's coming for them,
Mm-hmm.
of the fight that lies ahead. And you say, how can you deny these people? How can you deny the people themselves, the human condition? The human condition is what is leading the Harkonnens, which is leading the Bene Gesserit, the conniving plots,
Mm-hmm.
the genocide that is coming. And he, like I say, he has to choose between jihad or genocide. If he does not become the Muad'dib, if he does not lead his people on this wild crusade, then the Sardaukar will come. Then another falling of the hammer will come onto these people,
Mm-hmm.
and they will face, war and death and suffering on another planet once again, just like they did on Rosic and
Mm-hmm.
Seleucus Secundus and all these other planets. You know, once again, the Imperium is coming to refuel itself of
That's
the
right.
suffering of these people.
Mm-hmm.
He sees it. He knows it. Chani sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And now he knows why the jihad is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to see through the Freeman, but to see through the entirety of the galaxy. So it does not lose itself once again,
Mm-hmm.
in their suffering, in this blood, this blood debt that is owed to them, that is owed to the entirety of the people,
Right.
you know, and Chani sees this. She was afraid of this connection that she had with Paul.
Right.
This connection that Paul sensed, even he was mourning for himself before he ever knew he was, searching for his Sahaya, his desert spring, for a break from this impetus that he has felt ever since he's been born.
Mm-hmm.
These dreams that has been pulling him toward the undeniable. That this war, this conflict that we have been fighting for so long, is once again looking to roll over on itself. There is one way out. There is only one way, and that is for Paul to be the Muad'dib, for him to take the blind conflict, this all-encompassing genocide, and give it purpose, give it meaning, turn the genocide into jihad, and hopefully be able to see the people and himself out of it. But the only way he can do that is if Chani is there to give him peace.
Mm-hmm.
And Chani recognizes this. And then she comforts him.
Right.
He's giving water to the dead, to those who will die. And he says they aren't dead yet, so let them live.
Mm-hmm.
He sees the wisdom in that and gives himself to Chani.
Right.
Gives himself entirely to what he knows, to what he's always known. And there is no other way.
Mm-hmm.
He has a choice, but what else could he choose?
Right.
It is the ultimate betrayal of humanity that humans themselves have inflicted on themselves. It is the fallacy of the human condition that the human condition is an exercise in denial of humanity. We justify our sickness, and we use humanity to justify our sickness.
Mm-hmm.
We've perverted our own sense of self so we can continue to be broken. The freeman, everyone's lying.
Right.
Trying so hard to be in a world that can only allow them to be broken. He sees this. He knows what he must do. Jessica can't see it. She can only see the purpose.
Right.
She can only see what has happened to them, oneness.
Right.
Like I said, that's the utility in her vision.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes, Jessica's perception useful. Because there is a limitation.
That's right.
There is a thing that she cannot see.
That's right.
That's what makes it human. But Paul's perspective is not human.
Mm-hmm.
It is omnipresence. It is omniscience. It is all-knowing. It is everywhere. And it is everything. It is inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
It is beyond human, superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, her vision is useful. His vision is a trap that has trapped us to one conclusion.
Right.
To one conclusion. Like I said, he is everyone, so his fate becomes our fate.
Mm-hmm.
It is inexorable. And it is pushing him as much as it's pushing us.
Right.
There is no choice but jihad. We ensure it with everything that we do. Paul, like I said, is now forced to act out this passion play, to be the figurehead of humanity's folly, and hopefully be able to guide us through it to something else beyond it. His vision, he has this trinocular view, the eyes of God. He sees everything in every moment. He is everywhere. You know, you think you want that.
That's right. You think
But
this is
now
what you
that you
want.
have it,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot hide yourself. There is no ignorance. You have given yourself up to a judgment of a God that you have created. And now he will judge you in the only way that he can, because he has no choice. That type of power is the ultimate robber of agency, of yours and his. Because you've put him there and given him the writ to lead, to be exactly what you say you're looking for. And now he has no choice but to give it. His only hope, his only peace he will ever find is with Chani.
Right.
And his only hope is that maybe, just maybe, he can get us through this. That he can get us beyond the jihad, beyond this genocide. Jessica can't see it. The only one who can is Chani.
Right.
That's why she, is able to embrace him, see past her own fear of him and what he is causing, because he's everyone. Is what they're causing.
Right.
It's impossible for him to be a singular being, not on his own, not anymore. He is the collective will of a people who refuse to learn, and in holding that, he has already learned.
Right.
He sees it, he knows it, and he hates it. He doesn't want it, but it can be no other way, because we've already chosen.
Yep.
Now he, like I said, he must act out this passion play once again. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It's lonesome, but it's revealing. Like we said time and time again about you think you want this.
Right.
You said never forgive, never forget. Well, what type of people are you creating when you do that? What type of galaxy are you creating? What cycle are you feeding into when you refuse to learn? Because of someone else's sin. Right. Because of what has been done to you.
Right.
You stop being a people of your own self.
That's right.
And you become a people who run, who's running away. And now with Paul, you're going to run towards. But you will run. There will be no peace.
Right.
Not for you, not for anyone. You have given yourself up to that. You have given yourself up to Paul, to this vision, to this jihad. And it's just like the ultimate, it's purgatory. That hopefully there will be a lesson in this. That's his role, to try to give us some type of lesson. And it will be a lesson.
Yeah.
It will be something. But now, as this culmination for both Jessica and Aaliyah, the daughter, like he said in the last chapter, that you will give birth to my sister, Saint Aaliyah of the Knife.
Right.
All of them, Jessica, Aaliyah, and Paul, had been birthed into this new awareness. But whereas Jessica has this sense of oneness, this sense of companionship, Paul is more alone than ever.
Right.
And there's only one other person who can bear that weight with him. It is not his mother. It's not his sister.
Right.
It's Chani. And it's like I said, it's superhuman. His recognition of the ultimate inhumanity in us. We use sickness to justify sickness. We use pain to justify pain. Violence begets violence. All these things that we've said time and time again. All reflected, like I said, in this passion play that he is forced to act out. And it's just, it's hauntingly beautiful. It's harrowing and freeing to know that this is what it is for them, but that's not what it is for us.
Right.
it's freeing for me to
Mm-hmm.
read something like this and know that we are not here,
Right.
that we never will be, that omnipresence, omniscience is not possible for
Right.
us. It is purely theoretical for now.
Yeah.
Who knows what we might get to at some point, but we are still free.
Mm-hmm.
The limitations of our vision gives us freedom. It gives us a chance
Right.
to free ourselves from what we know, to be something more than that.
Mm-hmm.
We have that opportunity purely because we do not see.
Mm-hmm.
That's our freedom. Is that we can create in that space anything that we want. It's dark there. It can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment we put light there, the moment we see what that is, there is no more hope.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have that.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a chance.
Yeah, there's
The
no
Freemen,
chance there,
the
right?
Harkonnens,
Right.
the entirety of the Imperium, they don't have a chance.
Right.
And it's going to take a long, long time for them to get one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to take 6 books of
Right.
the Dune series
Right.
for them to try to get a chance.
Right.
To put this to bed once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we're right here.
Yeah.
And the window is always open.
Mm-hmm.
The door is always open. We can always take that chance. We can
Yeah.
always do that. But we won't.
Mm-hmm.
Not yet. Because we haven't learned our
lesson. That's right.
We haven't learned to be people without,
Mm-hmm.
in spite of, because of. We haven't learned. Not yet. On what it means to be a human being.
Mm-hmm.
To truly be alone. Because that's what we are. We are alone with ourselves. And we fail to confront that. We fail to confront each other. We constantly make up these divisions amongst
Mm-hmm.
each other. We murder each other because of them. We justify this murder because of the transient surroundings we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we are poor, or rich.
Mm-hmm.
The rich kill because they're greedy. The poor kill because they're hungry. But the end result is all the same.
Yep.
Death. We're constantly chasing after these things. And rich and poor, like I said, doesn't exist. They're transient.
Mm-hmm.
They're conditions we created for ourselves that
Mm-hmm.
can be changed with the slightest whim. The physical reality that we exist in is beyond this. But the human society is completely solipsistic.
Right.
It is us. We can do with it what we want. It should not come down
Mm-hmm.
to a Paul Muad'dib.
Right.
It is a damn shame, a crying shame, that this 15-year-old boy, whose only, sin, quote unquote, is that he is able to see more than the rest of us.
Right.
Has been imparted this terrible purpose
Mm-hmm.
because the rest of us refuse to see.
Sounds familiar.
How
many times have we done that?
Mm-hmm.
That we have, think about Dr. King, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like 15, 16 years old when he attended Morehouse. That's when everything, started to... That's who we left. We put the fate of our lives, I guess you could say, in the hands of someone who's 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we did. Malcolm was really young as well. This is what we're doing. We've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what happens
Mm-hmm.
when we do that. And so now we can do something else. We can.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems as if we are owed this.
Never forgive. Never forget.
Never forgive. Never
We hear
forget.
the screams bellowing down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
We can't.
Right.
We shouldn't.
Right.
But this world doesn't need our forgiveness or our forgetfulness.
Mm-hmm.
I've often talked about what forgiveness and all these things actually mean. Is that it's not about forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about moving on.
Right.
It's not about, denying yourself justice and vengeance. It's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about redefining what these things mean. Instead of justice and vengeance, these things being a sword, a weapon that we wield against our enemies, it becomes a tool that we use to create a new world.
Mm-hmm.
You think that these things are one and the same, that you can do both. You can't.
You can't.
You can't.
Mm-hmm. And
destruction is destruction.
And
nothing born of it is actually creation.
Right. Yeah. And that is with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we have a a very recent example of this. I talk about Rwanda a lot because
Mm-hmm.
that's one of my favorite African countries. Okay, but we know what we know. We had almost 1 million people,
Mm-hmm.
to die from that. You know, and that stain is with them.
Irrevocable.
It's irrevocable. I don't care what they do. That is with them, and it's going to be with them. You cannot bury that.
Mm-hmm.
That is with them. So every time they make this, I guess, step, and it
Mm-hmm.
looks, like, oh, they're doing this and doing that, but you still attached
Mm-hmm.
to those millions people who were murdered,
Butchered
butchered.
behind absolutely nothing.
You know,
It's
and,
always
and then yeah, and then of course we want to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Hoochie, Tutsi, the French and their and then
Mm-hmm.
and their role in this, and the Catholic Church, or whatever it is. But it was us wielding the machete.
We made the final choice.
We made the choice. That's what we did. And every time it's been maybe 25, 26,
Mm-hmm.
years. That's what it's been. A generation. And for the people who were really young at the time, and for those who were born at that time, they still wear those scars. These people are still around.
Mm-hmm.
They're still here. You're not That's not going to go away.
And it could be 3,000 years.
It could be three. That's right. And who doesn't know that better than us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we talk about,
Our generation.
right. And who it is that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the white man. How it's been for 500 years, 1,000 years, or whatever. What is it that they can do?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, what is it that they can do to, get rid of that stain that's
Mm-hmm.
on them? Nothing. You've said that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that these people can do. Nothing. So that's their marker.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And so that's what we're dealing with, that reality. And so at some point, at least with Paul, and
Mm-hmm.
we we have to recognize what has happened,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge what has happened, okay, and then move in a way to where it does not
Moving that acknowledgement.
move in. Yeah, you have to move in that knowing.
Yeah.
And that's not to lie about what happened,
Mm-hmm.
justify it, or any of these other sweet rationalizations. It's not any of those things. It's to move in the recognition of who you need to be right
Mm-hmm.
now, who you are now, and to move in that direction. Yet, here we are. So
yeah, like I said, these final chapters,
Mhm.
every last one of them,
Mhm.
are just phenomenal.
Right.
And now we are on to the
Third,
final
the third
part of Dune, called Prophet. And now we shall see the culmination,
That's
the true
right.
culmination
Mhm.
of the entirety of the story in and of itself.
Right. And so, like we've mentioned, if you have the book and you're reading along with us, we think it's absolutely phenomenal. Leave comments and anything that you may, think that we should, point out
Mhm.
and discuss. Leave that in the comments. And if you aren't, reading the book,
Mhm.
just continue to follow along, because you see how these conversations
Yeah.
are going, and so just stick with us and hear us out.
Hear us out, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.